Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Gauging India's Inflation in Real Time. My name is Rohini Sanyal, and I work as a global research economist at the ISI Emerging Markets Group. Joining me today on this webinar is Prithviraj Panigrahi, the CIC Product Manager for India and Indonesia. He has been with the ISI Emerging Markets Group since 2011. Prithviraj holds a postgraduate degree in economics and has keen interest in data, particularly alternative and high-frequency economic data. At the end of our presentation, he will give us a little bit of a glimpse into what the CIC data's coverage is on inflation. Thank you for being here, Prithi. I'd like to thank you all for joining today. The global inflation situation is, of course, not news to any of you. And as you already know, that India too has been dealing with elevated inflation since the beginning of the year, which has been exacerbated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In fact, in October 2022, the data has shown some respite in inflation, but it continues to remain above RBI's target range of 6%, and that's for a 10th straight month. So before we dive into like how we created this dashboard and exactly how we can use it, I'd like to mention a couple of points that will help us interact during the session. So for today's webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. All attendees are on mute, so you can submit your questions in writing using the question panel on your right. We will answer as many as possible during the Q&A session at the end. Second, we also have a handout section just above the question panel where we have uploaded our presentation for today, and you can download it for your reference. And at the end of the webinar, we have a short survey to capture your feedback and expectations, and we really encourage you to please fill out the survey and let us know how you felt about it. So coming back to our company, well, many of you been part of our webinars before and know about our company. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, the ISI Emerging Markets Group has been in the business of providing information on emerging markets for over 30 years. ISI Emerging Markets Group has three brands. One is CIC Data, which provides macroeconomic data on more than 200 economies. EMIS, which focuses on providing company, industry and country research on emerging economies. And finally, Red Intelligence, which is the newest addition to the company and serves as a global leader in distressed and event-driven special situations and intelligence on emerging markets. So with that, we jump straight into what we are going to talk about today. Why are we running this exercise? To really understand why we want to see inflation real time. So the CPI data for India is released usually on the 12th of every month, or sometimes even later if 12th falls on a weekend. So basically in that period, we have missed out the what inflation has been over the past month for what more than like 40 days. If we count from the beginning of the month. So in order to tackle this problem, to really see where we are in terms of inflation, we have a very interesting data, which is data on food from the National Horticulture Board, the NHB data. And then we also have some data from DCA, which is the Consumer Affairs, Department of Consumer Affairs, that has data on agricultural commodities. And then data from Indian Oil, which is on fuel prices. So all of these data are daily data. And this, when we look at the composition of it, here you can see the item weights under the consumer price index. And we see food and beverage is the largest section, comprising 45%, more than almost 46% of the total. And then considering fuel and light, this is about 6.5. So in total, this forms about half the inflation basket in itself. So if we can understand how this is moving, we can get a sense of how headline inflation might be moving. And when we look at the items under the food and beverages category, we can see the breakup, cereals and products, milk and milk products, vegetables, so on and so forth. So even from this, we can get a sense of how, when we look at the prices of the categories under these, we can get a sense of how inflation might be moving. So this is not really inflation nowcasting, but you can say it's like a step towards inflation nowcasting. For inflation nowcasting, we have to do proper modeling, which CIC is currently sort of researching on. But for now, what we have is this dashboard, and I will just, switch to the CDM Next platform so you can see how this looks. But before that, more quickly as to how we are, apologies, how we are constructing this indicator, these indicators. So first of all, when we look at the data, we look at the National Horticulture Board that releases daily data on fruits and vegetables, as I said. And then the Department of Consumer Affairs releases the daily price of 22 agricultural commodities from 114 market centers. Okay, and then the four cities, sort of like average of the four cities for fuel. So when we are talking about construction, like how we are collapsing this data, so let me just take you to the platform here. Just give me a second. And you'll be able to see, how it looks like. All right. Okay, I think you can now see the CDM Next platform. This is where we have all our data. And as you can see, I already have it open. So when we look at the National Horticulture Board data, you can see that the first one here is Aula, and Aula is available by cities. And one of the major problems when we are dealing with fruits and vegetables is that the seasonality factor kicks in. And also sometimes the fruit or the vegetable is available across a set of cities and not all of these cities which are listed. So these were some of the challenges that we had to undertake when we were considering this exercise. So what we did basically is that we took all of this data at first, and what we tried to do is we tried to provide some weights to the data and see how that would project the, if we can collapse it into like one price point for Aula, let's say, or here we have Apple. So let's say for Apple, how do we get to one price point, daily price for apples? And when we undertook the weightage situation, so we tried to weight it by population. However, this is not desirable because when we did more research into what really does the price setting for any particular fruit or vegetable, so sometimes it is not the population or the demand of at a local center, but instead it could be the production. So for example, onion prices are actually determined by the prices set by Lasalgaon. And Lasalgaon is like this tiny little village in Maharashtra, and that actually is the main decider of the price of onions in India. So, but if I weigh it by population, then we lose it because the population is extremely low as compared to major cities. So hence, what we had to we had to do is probably come to a median pricing. And when we did the median pricing, because of some issues like technical issues, the median were not suitable. So what we did is we averaged it out across the cities, and that sort of matched what we would have on a median level as well. So what we see here when we are looking at a single price point is we see the average prices across cities for all of the fruits. Now I'm starting off with the consumer price index because this is just to see how the consumer price index has been since the beginning of the year. And if you see here the headline values, this is what we can actually determine using the food and fuel prices. And you see here, this has been above the 6% band since January. In fact, so this is the 10th month that CPI, the headline inflation, has remained above above RBI's upper target of 6%. And now when we see, obviously, like fuel and light has been very elevated, especially since here you can see in so June 2021, we've seen very high inflation, sort of exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine war. Here we can see again it has gone up, and then now on the slow sort of decelerating path. Similarly for food and beverages here, you see this has had a very strong sort of increase until April, and then a bit of respite, and then again upwards, and now down again. So even for food prices, we've seen quite a bit of volatility. So when we have uncertainty and volatility, that's what really works for us, is we know what's happening real time. Again, sort of reinforcing the need for this exercise that we're doing. So here, from the methodology that I spoke about, what we have done is we've collapsed the prices of each fruit to at a single price point for India. So for bananas, for example, you can see that as compared to September in the previous year, the prices have eased. However, if you look at the first value and the last value, you'll see, or let's see this one, if I compare November to November, and then you can see it's 3.4 per quintal, and then here it's 3.4. So essentially there is no change. It's picked up in the middle and then sort of gone back. Similarly for apples, we can see a bit of easing, and seedless grapes, again a bit of easing here. Prices are climbing down. Mandarin, this is basically the season starting for mandarin in some ways. So you can see here, if I look at the heat map on your right, the mandarin, which was red, is now sort of moving towards more green as the season is kicking in. Similarly, so if we see here, basically for the October values, we will see that prices have mostly been on the easing side. And this is arranged by the descending order of weights. So banana has the highest weights amongst fruits, followed by apple, grapes, mandarin, mosambi, so on and so forth. So the major items of the fruits basket are seeing an easing or a deceleration in the prices. So this means that more or less we'll see, the respite that we're seeing now is sort of expected to continue. Here we can see again banana, apples, grapes are sort of picking up. So maybe grapes might not see this might not add to the easing bit. Mandarin is easing. Then pomegranates here, pear and aula. Again, but pear and aula have low weightage. Overall, it is about taking an intelligent guess basically towards how it might be moving. So from what we are seeing in fruits particularly, there might not be a lot of easing, but we should not see a price increase either. So this is sort of going to remain moderate. Now, if we come down to vegetables, let's say. So vegetables, we'll see for potatoes, there is a clear pickup. There's the October values are all red. And when we look at November values, here we can see a bit of easing for fresh potatoes and then sort of picking up, but this is not very major. So 2.7 in October as compared to, let's say, 2.1 last year October. So a little bit of an increase, which is easing a bit over the month. Then store potatoes are seeing a decrease in their prices. Onions continuing to see the decrease. And here, if we compare these values on your right to the ones on the left, you'll see that onion prices actually climbed down from what it was back in like last year, end of last year and early this year. So onion is going to continue seeing an ease. Then similarly for tomato. So more greens here, that is suggestive of the respite that we're going to see in vegetables. If we look at the CPI for vegetables, we see a significant decline, not a decline, sorry, a slowdown as compared to the previous month, and that is expected to continue due to the prominence of sort of like the greens here in that area, that's showing that vegetable prices are climbing down. All for except maybe garlic, but obviously majority of them are in the green zone. Coming to the price of agricultural commodities, we can see here rice. Again, this is arranged by the descending order of weights. So rice, atta, wheat, these are the highest weightage, and these are a little bit in the reds. Milk is in the red, again with high weightage. Mustard oil, which had eased until about October, is sort of picking up in terms of prices again in November. And here we see a bit of a mixed bag when we look at the agricultural commodities. So not a lot of respite. For some, yes. For others, not so much. Potatoes, here also we've seen potato as red. Tur dal, again, which is something of a, dals are a staple in Indian diets. So reds here again. And here we can see rice picking up on the last day a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. So perhaps here it will stay more or less constant, or maybe even pick up a little bit if the prices of the oils rise more sharply. Sugar, potato, here potato is easing. Again, not significant, but easing nevertheless. Onions are easing, moong dal, groundnut oil. Oils are seeing more of a spike. However, the weightage of oils is not a lot in the total basket. So if we go back up, we'll see here we can see oils and fats is around 7.8%. So as long as the prices are dominated by these which are sort of coming down, we should see a moderation in the prices and not it should not move upwards. And then last but not the least, we come to fuel prices. Here you can see the auto prices which were sort of low last year, picked up sharply when the Russia-Ukraine war started out, and now it has come down, except for aviation turbine fuel, which has sort of stayed more in the red. Diesel has eased and remained unchanged since June, actually, but not unchanged, but minor, decline. Indian gas and petrol as well. Petrol, we see a little bit of easing too. And broadly speaking, here we can see that auto gas has remained in the greens, aviation turbine fuel more towards red, although it stayed pretty consistent in the second half of the month. Diesel remains unchanged, and petrol remains unchanged. Indian gas has also seen a bit of easing. So on the fuel side also, we might be seeing an easing more than an increase. So not an increase, moderation, or a slowdown. So overall, when we look at the picture at the food and fuel, when we put it together, we can see that there is more greens when we consider the last 1 year. There are some reds, of course, but mostly greens, which means that inflation will continue to sort of ease, even if not very sharply. So this is what we have in terms of the data, the dashboard. This is how it can be used. We also have like these data stories which go along with it. Let me quickly check if there's anything I'm missing out. So yeah, I think broadly the inflation seems to be easing, not in a very strong fashion, and India can expect that the respite will continue and figure will hopefully climb down. That also means that in terms of the monetary policy, we might not see a very strong hike in the policy rate, which is upcoming next week. And with that, I think if anyone has any questions, please use the question panel on your right to ask them. We will consider these questions. And with that, I will hand it over to Prithviraj who will give us a little bit of a idea about how you can use what you can use for inflation. There are obviously more ways and more data that you can use to complement this. But I'll leave that to Prithviraj. So Prithi, I'm just giving it to you. All right, just give us a second.
Thanks, Rohini. That was very insightful, and there's a lot of information that we kind of quite a lot of details that we come across in that short presentation. So again, good afternoon, everyone. What I'll briefly do is we have a very unique three-pronged approach to helping make data around inflation available to our clients, and I'll take you through the platform where we will show you some of these data sets and the way they are presented. So this kind of the approach that we have taken for inflation is more of a not only a post facto analysis of inflation once the CPI numbers are released by CSO, but also we are making data available that can help forecast or pre-trend the inflation data before the actual numbers are out. So what basically we have done here is that first, under inflation, we have done a very comprehensive coverage of inflation. So this kind of spans across CPI, WPI, as well as the CPI from Labor Bureau, which is one of the oldest running CPI data sets on India. So I think the Labor Bureau goes on way back from 1960 onwards, but it was limited only to industrial workers and agricultural workers, and so its adoption was not very high in terms of for monetary policy or other decision making. Gradually, when CPI got released, it was there was that was immediately incorporated into policy making. So here under CPI, we comprehensively cover all the universe of data sets, that CPI, that CSO releases. It includes the aggregate commodities at wholesale level, the aggregate commodities at India level, and then it's broken down into rural and urban, along with the respective commodities and their weights. We follow a similar approach when we are kind of addressing data, when we are making the data on state available. So there we also have a comprehensive coverage across rural, urban, as well as aggregate. So if you kind of, for example, pick up Andhra Pradesh. So Andhra Pradesh, here the CPI numbers are there for all the aggregate commodities and sub-commodities and commodity groups. Along with that, the breakdown by rural and urban is also provided. Now, having done that, the next part comes to the CPI by Labor Bureau. It also has a city-centric database whereby across different states, the rural laborer CPI is produced, and for industrial worker, it goes on all the important industrial centers across India. So yeah, so with that, we kind of offer a completely holistic coverage of data on inflation from public sources. The second part comes with prices. So under prices, and this is the more interesting data set which has become extremely popular as of now, as there is increased interest in trying to kind of trend data, as Rohini emphasized, trying to understand what would be the CPI trend, what CPI trend is to be expected, and here we have made available retail and wholesale prices. Again, something unique about CEIC is we make the raw data available in a very clean manner so that users can use their discretion. So here again, retail prices data from NHP for fruits and vegetables is comprehensively covered across different cities. Similarly, from the DCA, the Department of Consumer Affairs, we cover all the important commodity groups. Now, one part is the daily data and the other part is monthly data. Again, in terms of monthly data, we have a very comprehensive coverage across data from Department of Consumer Affairs as well as from the Labor Bureau. So here we have very interesting tools provided within the platform to quickly zero in on the required data. So for example, if you're looking at monthly data, we pick up the filter, and once we apply the monthly filter, it just filters out all the monthly data. And once we come to price, we will see that the comprehensive data on wholesale prices and retail prices with monthly frequency is available. So here all the commodities from the DCA, the commodities which form the major basket of the inflation, like almost as Rohini emphasized that 45% is consumable commodities. So this is very comprehensively covered here. Now the third and interesting part of inflation tracking or understanding inflation in India is also being able to predict the different upcoming commodity cycles, and that becomes very interesting because there are two parts to it. One part is that we are irrigation dependent for rabi crops, and for that water level statistics are very important. With the change in rainfall pattern, that data has become very important. And so what we have done to address that requirement is under the agricultural sector. Again, we will just pick up the high frequency data here. So under agricultural sector, we have a detailed coverage on crop sowing across all the major states for all the important crops, which includes rice, coarse cereal, millets, and oil seeds, which form one of the most volatile components of the inflation baskets. Right? So pulses, sugarcane, and all those details are very comprehensively covered on a weekly frequency. So this gives the progression of the cropping season. Now to further supplement, so if there are kind of any inflationary trends, like in a drought season, those kind of signals can be picked up from the agricultural cropping data. The last part of the data set brings us to the weather statistics, and again, like if you I'll quickly take you into the environment sector, where we have comprehensive coverage on weather and water resources. So under weather, we kind of include the rainfall data, very comprehensive coverage of rainfall data across regions, states, and subdivisions on a daily frequency. So which will help you kind of predict the progression of monsoons, and even in fact, it will also help you kind of identify the regions which are kind of deficient or where there is excess rainfall. And the second part of the environment data is water resources data, whereby so in case of a deficient rainfall situation, so for example, if MP has a deficient rainfall for a particular for a particular year, then we will be able to track the amount of light water across the different storage capacities, like the dams and the large dams that they have, or the river basins within the within Madhya Pradesh. So kind of these three types of data sets, or these three pillars put together, can help you will help you kind of develop a very holistic framework on CPI. I think that's all from my side. I'm open to queries if there are any, or else I'll kind of hand the presentation back to Rohini for comments.
Thank you so much for that very interesting sort of deep dive into the data. In fact, I'm kind of I want to show a little bit about like all of the data that you have shown here, especially on the agricultural one. And I think what I can do is give a little bit of a glimpse into what we have prepared as. So you can see here, the area change in area sown under Kharif crops. So here, this will also, as Prithi has mentioned, this also gives you a nice estimate of how we might be doing in terms of like the production, like if the crop sown is, what percentage of normal area are we at. So for example, here if you see when the Kharif crop sowing started, it started at quite a high percentage as compared to others. So in the previous year, in 2021, it started at 18.9%, but in 2022, in July 15th, we were at 54.6%, which finally ended at 101.6, which is a less, 101.6% of the normal area, which means we've sown more than the normal area. However, that still remains less than what it was in the previous year. So overall, there is not a major change in production as much, but there's going to be, what do you say, like there's going to be some impact on the final prices. So this is actually also used by the RBI, when they are framing monetary policy. If you read through the minutes, you'll see that they refer to this data quite often. That the monsoons are expected to augur well, or not augur well. If there are crops we are expecting, so things come in. And if you give me a minute, I'll just quickly have a look at 1 second. Okay, so thank you for this. Is the tracking error large between RBI and the real-time data? Well, it is not. Did you say the RBI? I'm sorry, just 1 second. The tracking error large between RBI and the real-time data. Well, so the RBI, by the time they actually put out these numbers, they're already sort of, these are bi-monthly meetings, and we don't have enough, what do you say, they don't have data, much data until then. So whatever decision they base it on is on the data they have just till the date of like the monetary policy, right? So what happens is they do, of course, look at these data, but it's sort of hard to really say how much is the difference between the tracking, the error between what the RBI puts out and what we have. So unless there is any major shock, it shouldn't be too much, but usually these are adjusted at each monetary policy meeting. So yeah, not a lot. As I said, the RBI looks at a whole range of data to really understand inflation, and they have a bunch of teams who are projecting these through statistical models, through proper like estimations. So yeah, I mean, what we are doing here, we're just trying to get a sense of whether inflation is going to move up or whether it's going to move down. This can sometimes help with understanding if there is going to be a rate hike or, but of course, this is not like sacrosanct, and it has to be sort of seen along with other things as well, like monetary tightening in the US, which also plays a part in the monetary policy decisions that are made in India, not just inflation. So yeah, okay, let me take another question here. What about the food reserve storage that should be held as part of your social security system? Well, food, I think this is on a different sort of tangent, but if you're trying to say like, if there is dearth of food, there's going to be inflation, that is true. However, I don't think that food reserve storage, we should really make a very big difference to inflation per se. I don't know, Priti, do you have anything to add on this? I'm not sure.
No, nothing much to add. I think basically, like kind of for some of the basic, the government of India has a food procurement program, basically for the core cereals, which are then again which after procurement, basically it's rice, wheat, and few of the core cereals, and after that they are kind of distributed to the public distribution system. That kind of sets a floor to the price, but however there are a market determined price as well, and that's the reason why DCA data, or the Department of Consumer Affairs data that we recently kind of showcased, has become so important for understanding the trends in inflation. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, perfect. We have another question which says, how can we gauge the underlying price trends for items like clothing, footwear, household goods, education, etc., which are mainly core CPI items? This is a very, very good question. Now, the problem with this is we don't have much data, right, on this. And what we have to do is look at alternative data sources. And this is exactly what CIC is trying to do. We are trying to, get a sense of like, let's say, data from retail, web scrape data, something like that. We are currently like, we're reviewing these kind of data to see if we can understand what the prices of such items could be like. Because right now at present, we don't have any proper source of this data. And sort of measuring what core CPI might be is a very difficult task. Agreed. Yeah, I'm sorry, like, there's not much on the core CPI bit, but we do hope that we'll have something that will help us in the future, maybe sometime soon, to really understand how core CPI might be moving.
Just to add on what Rohini added, like for example, like in white goods and all that, we have prices like fortnightly prices on sheet metal, but that's a broad indicator because the type of metal that is used in white goods are kind of very specialized, and most of the prices are determined within private players. On the textile side, we have some data on cotton textiles, which is being released from the Ministry of Textiles, but of late the data has been a bit irregular. So there are a few areas of data gaps within the domain, but nonetheless, like there are a few other things like the component regarding the vegetables, fruits, and commodities, which tend to be very volatile, and that helps kind of that's what we are currently covering to help at least predict the trend.
Thank you. Yeah. We have a question here which says, do you do statistical modeling? And if yes, what models and methodology do you use? So yes, we do statistical modeling, but we are still working on our inflation nowcasting model. And this is what we had in the meantime, for our clients to use. If you are looking for data on how to map inflation real time, this is definitely something that you can use to get a sense of where inflation might be moving. In the meantime, we have actually worked on something called GDP Nowcast, and we have this data on our platform already, and we are actually getting very accurate sort of, we're making close nowcasts to what the GDP might be for India. And we actually have it for 3 countries. So it's for India, Brazil, and China. So yes, and that uses the model that we use there is the dynamic factor model, which is the most popular model for nowcasting because of its easy to sort of use jagged edge data. So basically, it can the model is such that it can incorporate different release dates, which was a major concern before this methodology sort of popped up. So yeah, that is what we have on the platform right now, the GDP Nowcast, and I'd be like happy to show you that. But since we are talking on the inflation bit, I don't want to like digress. Let me see if we have any more questions. We have a question here that says, when you have excess food, do you keep food stamps data? I'm not sure. Priti, do we have anything on food stamps data?
We have some data on food public distribution. So basically, in India, we don't have something like food stamps. We have a very highly subsidized public distribution system. And from time to time, there are certain schemes are introduced. For example, around the onset of the pandemic, the government introduced a very specialized scheme, which basically takes care of all the rice and core cereals that are procured through the Food Corporation of India, as I mentioned in my earlier query, that the government of India maintains a price floor for commodities by buying them at a certain price, which is bought by the Food Corporation of India. Those rices are again redistributed through the public distribution system. So we have some coverage of public distribution system in our database.
Thank you. Then we also have a question on, do you map freight index, as this is also correlated to CPI? As far as I know, we do not map freight index, even if it may be related to CPI right now. The purpose of this exercise is to just see the two biggest components of the inflation basket, which is food. Sorry, I wouldn't say two biggest, but the largest is food. And of course, because we have data on fuel, both of them together comprise like 50% of the total basket. So that just, it just gives us a good sense of where headline inflation might be moving towards. And that is the true motive behind this exercise. We have a question here which says that how well does it map against the CPI print? Okay, so let me show you how well this maps against the CPI print. 1 second. Let me go back to so here, if you see, let's take okay, so for food prices, let's say in October, you can see that major items have sort of eased. More greens here in terms of fruits. And then if you look at vegetables, we see potatoes, there's not been massive difference, but onions and brinjal, all of these are more towards like easing and moderating. So if we look at the prices of fruits and vegetables, like consider this against the food and beverages, here you will see that there is a drop when we look at the October data, even though it remains quite inflated, above, like, let's say something like September 2021, where it was just 1.6%. So yes, there is inflation and it's quite high, but at the same time, it is sort of slowing down. And for next month, for November, we might see a further easing of this number. And once we have this data on the 12th of December, you can actually match it and see that this is what it will be. I can say that with some confidence. Okay, let's have a look at any other questions we might be seeing. How can we use CIC retail sales data to forecast trends? It's a very wide question. I'm not sure how to answer this. Again, maybe something that we have used is to create the GDP nowcast, and we have used underlying indicators to forecast or nowcast data. So, but retail sales for India, we don't really have retail sales. So for India, we actually depend on more vehicle sales to really get a sense of what retail sales are. And Prithviraj, please correct me if I'm wrong here. That when we look at auto sales, that is what gives us a sense of what retail sales might be like. Okay, but to get a more high frequency understanding of like how sales might be headed, we actually look at vehicle registrations, which is also a data set that comes under our alternative data and is on the platform right now. And we can pick up some very interesting trends from vehicle registrations instead of sales. And actually, for India, vehicle registrations are much more accurate in sort of showing what the prediction, what the status of consumption is like. And if I may add, actually, that we just recently did a small research analysis on this, and we found that vehicle registrations have actually climbed to the highest they have been since the pandemic started, which points to a very strong revival of consumption in India. So just sort of give an idea as to how retail, well, not retail sales, but CIC data can be used to forecast trends. Prithviraj, do you want to add something to this?
No, I think that was perfect, right? And we have a very detailed data which goes by class and vehicle type, which includes like two-wheelers, four-wheelers, tractors. So kind of very construction vehicles. So it has proved to be a very good indicator of not only retail sales or consumer demand, and we have this data by states across the different classifications. So it has not only proved to be a very good proxy indicator for consumer demand, but also for commercial and agricultural and rural demand, particularly things like, for example, tractor sales. We have seen very interesting trends, like immediately in the post-pandemic, after the reverse migration happened. So we suddenly saw a spike in demand for spike in registration of tractors and two-wheelers, which again kind of gradually starting to subside as labor has started to migrate out to the big cities, as per the pre-pandemic trend. So it has proved to be, it's a very robust data, and we have a very comprehensive coverage across both monthly and weekly frequencies.
Right, thank you. Okay, so we've actually passed our, we've passed our time. So, thank you for all of the questions. We're still getting a lot of questions. We will answer each and every one of them by email. That's a promise. And maybe just to wind up, I'll just go back to the presentation here and to give you a sense of where we, what we have. As you can see here, we do have a India Premium database that has, as we showed, a lot of data on the Indian economy. And can you see my screen? Yeah, okay. Sorry, something. Yeah, so basically macroeconomic data, industry sectors, real-time updates. We have a lot of insights that you saw, which have been prepared or using this data sort of help you understand the economy even more. And currently what we are working on is all of the, a lot of alternative data sets that have been added now to our platform. This is data on employment, data on crop sowing, all of this new data is available. So please feel free to reach out to us if you just want to, have a look at what we have on the platform. So that's it from our end. Thank you very much. You can access our latest webinars through this link. It should also be in the handout, which you've downloaded. So please feel free to go visit and do reach out to us if you have any questions and queries. Thank you very much and have a very good evening, afternoon. All right, bye-bye.